Welcome back, Weekend Horror fans. This week we're covering August 9th through August 15th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Eugene. With me always tonight is Alex and JL.
Hey, welcome back, Eugene.
Welcome back, dude.
Thank you so much. I missed you all so much.
Johnny O covered for you. He was adequate.
Oh damn!
I say that because he listens to us regularly, so he's gonna hear this.
No, we had a blast last week with Johnny on.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have him on again soon.
Oh, absolutely. He is our only special guest to actually cover 2 shows. So it was really, really cool having him in, and he had a lot of fun going back and actually watching the movies that we talked about, and he hadn't seen him in a while. So I think he digs that the most, is actually having a requirement to go and watch old movies. It's like the perfect excuse to go and watch shit you haven't seen in forever. So he's always a blast to have on. I love what he and everybody else is doing over there on the plot hole. Him and Keith. It's always fun to see what kind of crazy shit they're going to come up with every Friday. And if you do want to hear more from Johnny O, definitely check them out at the Plot Hole every Friday at 8 p.m. at www.rockmetaltalk.com.
And if you're actually listening to this over the YouTube, there is a link posted below.
Boom. Now, where has the fucking time gone? I swear to God. And it's funny because people know I'm an atheist.
Swear to God.
Looking back, I swear, we just started this thing. We kicked this thing off on a whim, just trying to put something together, kind of be creative ourselves, to do something new that, we all needed a creative outlet. We all needed something where we could create and put something together that people might enjoy. But at most, the primary goal, that we could be creating and enjoy something that we enjoy ourselves, something we would really love being a part of and enjoy doing, and hopefully that would find an audience. And we just started this last September. We kicked this whole thing off, this ride with Weekend Horror, and we're closing in on our fucking season finale. Can you believe it?
Year 1, not even season, just an entire year.
Entire year, because yes, we go long form here. Seasons are fucking years here, motherfucker.
52 episodes.
Fuck this 22 episode bullshit. We go 52, motherfucker.
Man, I can't believe it, because it seems like a couple of months ago you're just like, hey, I'm thinking about doing a horror podcast. What do you think? Yeah, sure, Figure jump on, do a couple of episodes here and there, and just kind of see. And then, we're almost hitting 52.
Oh, it's wild. And I like how you were kind of going the direction, but you didn't say it, because it was kind of like, yeah, we'll do a couple episodes, see how it goes, and we'll probably lose interest, and it won't do anything, and we'll go back to our lives. It didn't. It really, really didn't. This thing took on to kind of retrospective. It kind of took on a life of its own. I had the idea, and I brought it to Eugene, and I brought it to Alex, and both of them were game. They're like, hell yeah. Jared's kind of a nice guy. We'll kind of indulge him for a little bit, and, we'll see where it goes like that. That was really, really cool. I built up enough cred to convince people to help me. And I decided, this is the format. We're going to go. We're going to play with this. And our first 2 episodes, which you will never hear, our dear listeners, because they're terrible. We may do them eventually. We may bring them out in kind of like a look where we came from kind of thing. But we did not have any. We had no clue what we were really doing. We had so we put the shit together. Like, we think it's done like this, and things just were coming out whack. Levels were all over the place, and the fact that when we started we can't see each other. So I'm sitting here, we're talking to my mic, and Eugene's on his. We're spread out all over across the state of Texas, and we're just kind of guessing. We're kind of gauging where we're at, and that took a lot of adaptation to just adapt to where our natural cues are. And eventually, it kind of came together, and we're like, okay, we kind of got something here. Then all of a sudden, we're on Anchor, and then we're on iHeartRadio, and then we're tied in with other websites who are promoting us, and then we're engaged with the Plot Hole, and the Plot Hole's helping us out, and all of a sudden we're on fucking YouTube, and we're giving away shirts, and we're giving away merch, and we got merchandise, and we have a website, and it's just it blows my mind how fast it happened, and how much of my life it has fucking absorbed, because anyone who knows me knows I'm a hardcore World of Warcraft fan. I'm a big World of Warcraft fan. I have been playing World of Warcraft since launch in 2004.
Fucking nerd.
I'm a giant nerd. I'm a huge nerd. The people in the YouTube community that I'm a part of, they know how big of a nerd I am, and I shit you not, I haven't touched World of Warcraft since this ball got rolling.
Damn.
That's like
I still have
that's a very huge sacrifice.
Yeah, that is.
Yes, my wife was blown away because she used to call Weekend Horror my mistress. Or sorry, she used to call World of Warcraft my mistress. And then she's like, "Oh, you're gonna go play with your mistress right now." I was like, "It's not my mistress; it's a fucking game." But legitimately, I spent a lot of time and a lot of money on World of Warcraft. I fucking love that game. I keep wanting to go back and see what's going on, but I have pressing issues with Weekend Horror. I've got responsibilities here. And it shocked me that I was able to just take World of Warcraft and set it aside and focus solely on this. And it has been so awesome. And it's been the listeners that have really made it for me. They're the reasons that I'm kind of like, you know what? I don't need to play World of Warcraft right now. I don't need to go raid. I've got scheduling I've got to get done. I've got special guests I've got to get on board. I've got Anchor. I've got Patreon. I've got everything. I've got the YouTube channel. I've got promotion and marketing, and I've got to get it done. And it has been way more, and I can honestly say, intensely fulfilling.
Well, yeah, because it becomes a purpose at that point, and it's something. In terms of building this, we've been building basically a brand. That the podcast is our product, and we've been building that. And every time talking to a friend or something, it's just like, yeah, I checked out your last episode. It's really good. Like that's an awesome feeling to have, and people interacting, people are commenting and emailing us and posting comments on the YouTube channel, and we try to get to everybody's comment and just interact with them, and it's great.
Do you guys remember the first time we stood outside the Art Institute in Dallas?
Oh yes, yeah.
That was when we were going to that studio for the first time. It was like, oh, this is like a thing. Like, we're actually doing like a real thing.
So that's curious. So Alex, you'd say that was the moment that it kind of solidified for you.
Yeah, that was like, okay, we're all in now. Like, this is something we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. There's no backing out. We're on the steps of the Art Institute of Dallas, waiting to go into a studio booth. It's like we're recording a fucking podcast. A year ago, like you said, JL, you kind of just approached people and were like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing," and then I was like, "Well, that sounds like fun." And then you stuck to it so hard, and we just hit it off so well the whole time. We just worked together. If something wasn't working, we weren't afraid to be like, "Hey, this isn't working. Let's try something else." And then as like you said, we started clicking into place in spots, and now it's like we can come on here and, script or not, we could sit and have a whole episode and just play off of each other's vibes and stuff. So it's like it's something that's developed a lot, and it's really cool, and it's an awesome thing to be a part of.
Sweet. And Eugene, where do you think for what point did it kind of solidify for you, where it was like, holy shit, we have a fucking show?
It was listening to it for the first time, because we actually had a couple episodes posted, and I haven't listened to them. I was just busy doing other stuff. Like, okay, they're out there. That's cool. It's getting great interaction. And one day I was like, let me check out this episode.
Actually listen to what we do.
I was like, to be honest. So like, it's been a couple episodes. I was like really early, maybe episode 4 or 5 or something like that. Okay. And I was like, let me listen to it. And I was like, I think I listened to the entire episode. And I was just like, this is good. Like, this is
This is a podcast.
Like, this is good. Because the thing is, like, I've had other friends that have started podcasts about all various sorts of things, and I'll go, yeah, absolutely. And I like to give them a listen. I like to support my friends, and so, oh yeah, definitely send me a link. They send me a link. I listen to it, and most of the podcasts they're kind of okay. They're kind of like, I was like, okay, that's kind of, all right, good job. I'll support you. And then, but I was like listening to ours. I was like, this is fun. It's engaging. This is like, we went there and we left and we had it play on the background while me and my girlfriend were sitting there like doing stuff. Like packing or something.
He listens to us during sex. While we were doing stuff.
Yeah, while we were doing stuff.
So we were fucking, right? And
like the sound of my voice.
And it was like, wow, I really like listening to myself talk.
He's like, I could just see him. He's like, wait, here's my intro.
She's like, why do you keep listening to yourself? Don't worry about it. But yeah, that's, and the thing is I still enjoy doing it. I do.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, I look forward to it.
Yes, I agree absolutely. It's become one of the highlights of my week. I love coming in here. My office has become my studio, and I never in my life would have thought that would have happened. That I would actually get the opportunity to do this. Even doing voice work, you go into the studio. You go into like the studio at Funimation. You pop into the booth. You do the work for a little bit. You're just like, okay, I do that, but it's not like I'm doing it full time. I don't have like these giant gigs that I'm doing things. I'm either laying down Walla or I'm laying down ad lib, just like Boom or wild recordings. But to actually have this, and slowly but surely, my office has turned from kind of like the gaming kind of shrine that my desk was into Week in Horror, and it's all just as you can see in my background, when I'm on YouTube, it's just all the horror stuff that I have behind me, and it's slowly but surely growing. I can tell you the moment it solidified for me was I kind of procrastinated 1 month. And I was really, really close to when the Daily Splatter had to get done. And I was like, holy fuck, I've totally put it off. And this has to be done, like, tomorrow. Like, I've got to get them scheduled. I have to, and I handled the week, and as everyone knows, I handled the Daily Splatter, in the last week of the month. I start putting the Daily Splatter, I put all the photos together, I do all the writing, I write out all of the social media posts, and then I schedule everything for the entire month ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about it. Because at first I was doing it kind of like piecemeal, but now I schedule everything in advance. And I realized that I had 1 month. I think this was like January. No, it might have been December, but it was in winter, and I realized I'd procrastinated and I hadn't done anything. I had nothing set up for the Daily Splatter, like almost like less than 48 hours before they were supposed to be going live for the next one, and I was sitting there on my computer, I was like, fuck it, I jumped on this thing, I started crunching it, and I looked at the time, and I have to be at work in like 4 hours. And I was like, fuck it, and I finished the Daily Splatter. The whole fucking thing. Crushed it out, it took me like another 2, I got like 2 hours sleep, got up, and then I went to work. And I was fine, and I was happy, because I'd gotten it done. It was that moment when I knew, when the responsibilities kicked in, and I realized that the responsibilities kicked in, and I gladly jumped on it and got it done, and realized very quickly I cannot procrastinate on this shit. I've got to stick to my schedule. And now I schedule everything hardcore. I've got things scheduled 2 months in advance, and now it's kind of like that was when it solidified for me that we have a fucking show.
It's like,
and it's just it's been a joyride ever since.
Yeah, because that's a huge thing when we talk about people who are starting up with podcasts, or you want to start up a YouTube channel, or working on a film of your own project. When it's just your own thing, and there's actually not really a consequence for missing a deadline. Like when you're doing your own thing, no one's going to yell at you or anything like that. It's not like a job. But when you suck it up and you sit there and you still do it anyway, and you feel that responsibility and you knock it out and you stick to your deadline, you stick to your work, you stick to all that other kind of stuff, that's when it's important.
Yeah.
And you have to, any kind of venture that our listeners want to go through, whatever kind of artistic project that you want to do or you want to start, or even just business wise, whatever, that is important. Like, always stick to that, and you will get where you want to go.
Definitely. I did not think for a second that we'd get to this point. And it seems like nostalgia is kind of the, even though we've been around a little less than a year, but I feel very nostalgic going back, our very first episodes, the lengths that we have come from those very first attempts, from those test episodes we did to the very first two episodes
that we didn't air.
Yes, the shit that we did not air. And I feel kind of nostalgic looking back because we've come so far. And we've, our presence has increased so much, and we still have light years to go. Fortunately, the film community just continues generating product, and we have so many movies we can talk about. Not to mention, we're going to get coming up in season 2, we're going to get a little bit heavier into talking about some TV series. I know we have an episode coming up in season 2 where we're going to talk about nothing but American Horror Story, because we're coming up on the anniversary of when it first aired, when the very first season of Murder House aired. So we're going to talk about that. We'll probably talk about Tales from the Dark Side, stuff like that. We're getting heavier into it, and we've got shit tons of movies that we have yet to talk about, plenty of time to fill. It's going to be a fucking blast. And season finale, one thing I want to say, the season finale of Week in Horror is going to be September 23rd. We're going to be live streaming that on our channel, live stream via YouTube. We're going to have trivia. We're going to have giveaways. We're going to have hopefully special guests. Huh?
So popcorn and corn dogs.
Yeah, it's going to be a major event. We have the prizes. I think that I've picked out are going to be awesome. We've got prizes from Displate. We've got prizes from Funko Pop. We've got some really cool custom stuff, which I think is going to be really, really neat. And I was thinking about, like telling people what it is tonight, but I think I'll wait. I'm going to hold off. But I'm going to say that we've got stuff from Displate and Funko Pop, just really, really cool stuff that we're going to give away as part of these. Because I will say this, we're going to be talking about Seven, Shaun of the Dead, Carnival of Souls, and The Void.
The Void.
Which are 4 seriously fucking awesome.
That's a solid lineup right there.
Yes. I'm excited about it. I really, really am. I think it's going to be a great night. We're going to have a lot of people checking in. We're going to do trivia for those 4 films. So if you've seen these 4 films, brush up on them. If you haven't seen them in a minute, but brush up on these. The trivia questions are going to be tough, but the winners of the trivia are going to get these awesome fucking prizes. So it's going to be really, really cool. I cannot wait to unveil them. I think people are going to flip.
Yeah, not only brush up on the actual movie knowledge, but like the background knowledge as well.
Yeah, as much as you can, because I want to have tough trivia questions. It's not just going to be like, what was the name of the actor who played the captain? And if it's Arlie Ermy. Come on,
Bill.
What the fuck are you doing?
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really, really looking forward to it. We got some really, really cool stuff coming up. But speaking of nostalgia, that's kind of like I said before, it's kind of the theme of this episode, isn't it, Alex?
It kind of is. I think you should probably get us started off though, JL, with a classic. This is definitely something everybody's heard of.
Yes, this is absolutely wild. So, came out last year, August 9th, 2019. We had Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So, this movie caught my attention the minute I heard it announced. And I know a lot of horror fans out there, it caught their attention as well, because we all grew up with the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books.
Yep.
Volume 1, 2, and 3. Oh my god.
Scary Stories, Scary Stories, and Scary Stories 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Those books, Alvin Schwartz was probably a defining characteristic of my childhood, which is probably why I'm doing this today. But the film came out, and I was blown away. It was directed by Andre Overdahl. I'm going to give this special note because this is important. Produced by Guillermo del Toro, with a screenplay by Dan and Kevin Hageman, based on a story, or basically adapted from the story by Guillermo del Toro, Patrick Melton, and Marcus Dunstan. is who actually wrote the story for this, based on Alvin Schwartz's books. That is some serious fucking pedigree. Del Toro himself, plus the guys who were behind installments of Saw and the creators of The Collector were behind this. Of course, based on Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz, starring Zoe Colletti, Michael Garza, Gabriel Rush, Austin Zajur, Natalie Ganshorn, Austin Abrams, Dean Norris. I love Dean Norris. Gil Bellows, and Lorraine Toussaint. This movie, I think it was the nostalgia in me, because going back and seeing these live action versions of the stories that I grew up with, of like the Pale Woman
God,
and the Scarecrow. Yeah. But I'm sitting here watching this, and I'm like, and I remember reading the books. I know you guys read the books as well. We all came up with this.
Mm-hmm.
And what got me was I given the artwork, I never thought in the back of my mind that Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was really meant for kids, because there was some scary fucking shit in those books, like the spider in the face kind of thing. And I don't know. That's always been a big question. Is this this movie, not just the books, but the movie as well? What do you think this is for kids?
And see, that's kind of like a kind of a gray area, because we grew up reading these books, and these are some of the books that solidified our love for horror. I mean, we putting this together, and so watching the movie, this is what I thought when I was watching the movie. I thought I can understand how some people would be like, I don't know, this is for kids, but it is something I would have watched as a kid. Because, yeah, it has deaths in it, but it's not overly gory. It doesn't have any, like, super graphic violence or nudity or anything like that, but it just has the basic elements of what we like in horror. It has some suspense, it has some scary monsters in it, some supernatural elements to it. I mean, definitely. I can't remember the creature at the end where he breaks down.
Oh, with the dude whose head is all he came in through the chimney.
Yeah, he came in through the chimney and he like put his body together. That was scary now, let alone being scary. I was scared shitless as a kid. Like, that would scare the fuck out of me watching that.
I think seeing that, given that, the shit that I watched was like, because I watched like Aliens and weird stuff like that. I think it was quiet horror that really got me as a child. So I think The Pale Woman would have really.
Oh yeah.
Dude, reading the story and then seeing that come to life was like, I'm gonna go puke because I'm so fucking scared.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? I mean, it brought back memories. It really did.
That's you get into all of these. You get into every single one of these. Like when they first the woman, I can't remember the name of the story, but the toe ghost woman.
Oh
lady.
yes.
Oh yeah.
I think that was the first story in the first book, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but like immediately when because I hadn't read the book since we were kids, and I used to have the first time I ever. Okay, here, let me ask you guys this: what was the first story that you ever read out of those 3 books? Because I definitely didn't read the first. I think it was from the first book, but it was not the first story.
Let's see. I think when I actually picked up the books, I think I picked up volume 2 first.
More scary stories.
We're talking about going way, way back here.
I remember the cover on the one that it was the one with like the skeleton, the bony face, and that it had like a red nose and.
And we
yeah. I remember that being on the floor of a tent when I first read the book.
Yeah. Oh man, because you're right. I remember that. Like his face is kind of turned to the side and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I had to take a look at it. It was the very first book is the one that I picked. Is the one that I picked up. I did read the very first one, because it was the Hearst song.
Oh my god, yeah.
that stuck with me, and that was in the very that was one of like I think the 20. There was like 29. Yeah, there was like 29 stories in the first book, and the Hearst song was one of them. And that because it was musical, That always stuck with me. That kind of into that rhythm. That's like what, So that one stuck with me. And then it had stuff in there like The Man Who Lived in Leeds and Old Woman All Skin and Bone and Cold as Clay. And Alvin Schwartz's stories were amazingly both emotive and arresting. Especially the artwork. The artwork just was stunningly terrifying.
So creepy.
I don't know. It definitely affected me, and then seeing some of these things come to life, like you said, like the toe ghost or the pale woman. The pale woman still gives me shivers.
Yo,
and there's nothing inherently violent about that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like it has the elements of horror without going over, because there's nothing like inappropriate or something like that you couldn't show to kids. There's nothing like that, but it still has some of the great classic horror elements when he's in the hospital.
Scary.
And he's in the hospital, and the woman kept appearing, like he kept turning to run,
Yes.
and she just, no matter what direction he went to, she was getting closer and closer and closer. Like
It's so scary. I think that's why they, this is a tough question, because like you said, there's not like it's not an adult film. It's not, they're not adult stories, but they're so freaking scary that like, I guess it doesn't even matter if you'd be a kid or an adult. Like the movie, 2019. I'm 29 years old and I watch it and I think back to the stories and I'm just as scared now as I was then of some of those stories.
I was exactly, and I was because I just turned 40 this year. I was 39 when I watched this. 39 years old, sitting there with my wife in the dark, watching this film, and it was shocking how quickly those memories came back.
Yeah,
and
like the whole thing
had
too.
that
You could
same
imagine
feeling.
the whole story within a matter of like the first 5 seconds.
Yep.
Of realizing
Yes,
what was going on.
yes.
God, I
And
remember.
it brings those images of Gamel's the artist who did them was Stephen Gamel,
Yeah.
and his ink and charcoal drawings.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Oh,
like the
yes.
smeared- yeah.
the both incredibly evocative and very minimalist.
Yeah.
In his use of light and shading in those, just to create this image that, and we all, and anyone out there listening can look back at the book, can think of the books, and can think of one image of Gamel's that still sits with you today. The one that still there's actually two that still get me. The pale woman, and the image of the girl with the spiders coming out of her face.
Oh my God.
oh yeah.
I still remember that vividly from the first time I saw that.
I was thinking of Sam's Pet. I think it's Sam's Pet. It was the little hamster. It was like a hamster mole rat hybrid thing. It was all fucked up. Sam's Pet something. I can't remember. I don't know. I remember the first story though that'll always stick with me.
yeah, Sam's New Pet was in the third one.
Yeah, that's right. Sam's New Pet.
Yeah.
Yeah. That one always stuck with me. But the story that always stuck with me was I stood on the grave, or I stood on her grave. The girl who stood on a grave, where she like got dared to go stick a knife into the grave or whatever, and stuck the knife through her dress and got stuck and had a panic attack. I think that one sticks with me real hard because it was the most, when I was a kid, when I was reading it, that's the one that made me feel like the most. I come to realize later that I just have an anxiety disorder, and that's why that one fucked me up so bad when I was a kid. But it stuck with me. I think that one was in the first book.
Yeah, they do. So wild, and there was so much controversy when these came out, because I think numbers of parent organizations decried these books as being totally inappropriate for children, and tried to get them banned or try to get them shut down. And then all of a sudden, the film comes up, and all these memories come back, and it just it takes you on a ride. And I'll give it, the narrative that Del Toro and Melton and Dunstan came up with is actually quite good, and it plays. And it was while the medium was different, and instead of the book transporting you to these things and you conjuring these images yourself, they're there full bore in front of you on the screen, and it was still affecting in a slightly different way. But I think the attachment to the books may have worked that way. Anybody who has not read the books or didn't grow up with them may not have the same visceral reaction as to watching this film as we may have. But given the popularity of the movie and how well the movie did, I'm thinking that pretty much anybody who saw this read the books first.
Yeah, and the thing is it's a good movie in and of itself. I mean, it's something that obviously if you read the books, you're going to enjoy it and you're going to catch little nuances like, oh, I remember that, I remember this. But the movie itself, it's a type of movie, like if I had a kid, I wouldn't show it to, let's say, a 2-year-old or something like that. But if I had maybe 10, 12, 13-year-old or something like that was interested in horror, think about it, that is something like I would absolutely show them. Absolutely.
Just when they start, they get to the point where they start, questioning the world or, being inquisitive about, death and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. What is death? Let me show you something.
I got some stories to tell you, but definitely just wild shit. Fucking loved it. There's a question for the audience. We talked a lot about the books and we talked about the film. Film was pretty straightforward. They grabbed several instances, several stories within the books, and then wove them together into a coherent narrative, which was really good. All tied together by this book of stories, of scary stories. Really, really cool concept. I like the way that they did it. They made it easily accessible. But here's a question for anybody who's seen it. I'm very curious. How faithful do you guys think they were to the books? Was the movie faithful to the books? Did you have that same kind of reaction watching the movie as it took you back to being that the movie was faithful to them? Or do you think the movie really didn't strike the same chords? That it really wasn't all that faithful? That, given the book to movie translation, it can be very, very difficult to try and make that work. So what do you guys think? Faithful to the books or not so much? Let us know in the comments or at weekinhorror@gmail.com. So we've got a really cool one up, and one of my kind of personal faves. Definitely my top 10. Eugene, what do we have?
So this is a nice little kind of an underground film. It came out August 10th, 2001, and it is Session 9. And it was directed by Brad Anderson, and it stars David Caruso, Peter Mullen, and Stefan Gievdon. And also, I'm hoping on that one.
I always find the best names.
And then Josh Lucas.
Oh, that one was rough.
Oh yeah, I know that one. All I had to do is make it a Josh Lucas. That was it.
Josh Lucas.
Josh Lucas. And it's basically, it's about, you have a group of people who are asbestos removal. They specialize in asbestos removal, and they go and they stumble across this insane asylum while they're working. And as they're working, things start getting out of hand. But also at the same time, we start learning stuff about the past that happened in this insane asylum.
That sounds complicated.
It has kind of a dual narrative.
It's kind. I would say probably more than dual if you really dive into the whole thing. But yes, there's many. That's okay. So like you're talking about, you start learning stuff about the past, and like it in these sessions that God, I forget his name in the movie now already. These sessions that he's listening to, and you start getting into the multiple personality aspect of everything, and then you pull in like this dual narrative, like you said, where you've got like multiple storylines going on at the same time that end up kind of coming all around at the end. And then you get the big tie together at the end and stuff. That was pretty cool. I will give the film that. I found the whole thing it was kind of predictable to me, I guess. I kind of saw everything that was going on as it was going on, but at the same time, it was really cool to kind of take, hey, we're going to be talking about, this person with multiple different personalities, mental illness and stuff, and then you pick it apart into these different, you have to take these different paths with these different storylines, and then, you kind of tie it up. It was pretty cool. That was a very cool way to do like a lower budget film like this. I did find that to be kind of fun. I think that was probably the best part of the movie to me, though.
It's great that you actually mentioned the budget, because we see more films of like this level today. The fact it's just easier to make with just the technology advancements and everything like that. But this is, when I was watching it, it made me start thinking of a lot of films, like just a lot of buddies that I have that are filmmakers, and on that level, except with a film that came out 19 years ago. This was back in 2001. Low budget feature films were hard to make. They are very, very hard to make. And the fact that they were able to put it together and especially get the type of quality they got out of it is a good job.
Hey, they did what they could, and like budget wise, I think it was like 1.5 million on this one. But you've got some bigger names in this, and I expected David to throw his sunglasses on like in CSI, and like every scene, especially because he did the thing where he kneels down on one knee when he's like checking the ceiling tile that fell on the ground. I just expected him to like look up and throw the sunglasses on and be like, 3 weeks.
You gotta have that wow as he puts the sunglasses on.
I loved the despite the fact because I saw this movie before I ever saw Caruso in CSI Miami. And I think it was CSI Miami. Is that where he was at?
I think so. Yeah,
I think so. Before that, he was on NYPD Blue.
Yes.
And so I didn't have that same effect of wanting him to put on the sunglasses and hearing the Who every fucking time. But I appreciated the energy that he brought to it. It was nice seeing a familiar face. But I dug how each one of the members of the cast helped contribute a little bit to the uneasiness, because there was obvious the way Session 9 was written. I took away a sense of uneasiness to each one of the characters because they're not well balanced, which is really intriguing. Is that you didn't have guys who naturally played off one another. You had one guy who kind of felt he was naturally the leader, and you had one guy who everyone brought their own to the table, but there was already discord amongst them. So basically a bunch of guys who were forced to work together who were kind of like, yeah, whatever. And I thought that added to the creeping madness of the film itself, because we already have we can see the fractures between the guys, and then you add in things like the subliminal effects that they had in the film, that they utilized in the film, and it gets really, really intense. And I love the combination of both the technical aspect and the acting really brought this together for me. And I think it was Eugene, they used, for subliminally, they used animal sounds. And I think, what the hell was it? There was something so wild that they did. Yes, animal and mechanical noises that they incorporated subliminally into the sound design, which helped to really, I think, which is why I think this is a very effective movie, and because it really helps to sell the environment that the guys are working in and the natural kind of unsteadiness that goes on. And using effects like that is pretty well done in the history of Hollywood. I mean, The Exorcist did it, and other films have done it as well to great effect.
Yeah, absolutely, because they become sounds. It's weird because it's easy for the brain to kind of drown out animal sounds, but your brain still recognizes the fact that they're still there, and the way they're able to use it and the way they're able to kind of get you off balance. And a lot of creepiness in films and a lot of suspense is actually done more on the audio sense than the actual visual sense, because you can take a scary movie or scary scene and then mute it and watch it, and it just kind of loses something. You have the girl going through the dark hallway with the flashlight, mute it, and it's just kind of like a but then and this is talking about the power of sound. Then you can do this. Then you can listen to it, and then you close your eyes, and it's still scary. So you're talking about the power of audio. So they're talking about the power of like the audio part of it. So that's something that's very, very important. Sound design is super important for horror films, and with composers and stuff like that, the way they're able to do it. Because like with the Chernobyl soundtrack, they use nothing but mechanical sounds. There was actually not a single real instrument in the entire score for that. And then I love the score for Chernobyl. Extremely well done. So that's a huge part of creating a creepy vibe for a movie.
That's like I was trying to think of what they call it. It's like the saw thing. They use that saw with a violin bow.
Oh yes, yes. And very similar to what was it? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake.
Yeah, there's like a specific, I can't remember, there's like a name to the technique or what they call the instrument or whatever, but that's what comes to mind when you talk about like the mechanical stuff. And like you can throw that in pretty much anywhere, and then you know that that's like a sound for your like nerves to pop off to, like, oh no, something's gonna happen. So, yeah, that makes sense that you're saying that now. I'm thinking back to the movie, and that has a lot to do with it. For sure.
I really, really love that the film, given the kind of unreliable, it's almost an unreliable narration to the film, and given that, you can really interpret the film in a variety of ways, and I thought that the concepts of whether it was madness or whether there was an evil spirit or something it possessing people, I thought was kind of ambiguous. And I really, really enjoyed that. I don't know where I sided on the evil possession, but I know some other people sided with that it was madness. That what was his character's name? That he actually went crazy.
Gordon.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That he actually lost his mind and was slowly unraveling through the film.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense because his wife and yeah. Yeah, cause you follow it all the way to the end, and I guess at the very end, even you could look at it and be like, "Okay, this is what happened."
And that's the thing is by starting them off as this already kind of discontent among the characters, you already have somebody who is off balance. Because if you had the crew and they're walking in and they're all happy, then it's easy just possession. It's just an easy call. Oh, possession. There's no way. They're good friends. There's no way they can turn in a short period of time. No. But having them, they're already off balance. They don't want to work together. And we don't know, starting off, to what extent of this discontent. So they're already off balance mentally. So it could be madness.
I mean, because it comes down to what are two things that can creep in if you're in a weak state of mind? Madness or... if you're looking at the supernatural side, possession, it needs a weak mind. And you got this person who's like, come on, like, I know we said this job would take 3 weeks and then 2 weeks, but then like, hey, I've got 4 really good guys. We can do it in 1 week. This guy's obviously hurting in a place of desperation. So it could go either way. It could either be madness slips in due to the stress and the burden of the job that he's taken on, or, his mind could have been so weak, something could have slipped in.
Yeah,
absolutely. So this is actually something that I want to ask the audience. What do you think? Do you think it is madness? Did Gordon just simply go mad? Or was he possessed? Let us know. Email us at weekinhorror@gmail.com. Let us know. Chat with us. All right, Alex, what do we have next?
All right, coming up on one of my favorite movies, I think, of the last probably 4 or 5 years. Summer of '84 came out August 10th, 2018. This movie was written by Matt Leslie and Stephen Smith, directed by Francois Simard and this is Anouk Wissel, I believe. Probably close.
I think you got it.
I think it was
sure
close.
You got it.
That was a weird one. Starring Graham Vercher. I don't know if it's French or Graham V, Judah Lewis, Caleb Emery, Corey Gruder Andrew, Tara Scavby. Is this just Canadian?
I'm not
Rich
sure.
Sommer, Jason Gray Stanford, Shauna Johansson, and William McDonald. This one was cool because the whole cast played a huge role in the movie. This movie was about a teenager who convinced his group of friends that his neighbor, who is a police officer, is actually a serial killer, and they spend the summer collecting evidence against this man. And as they dig deeper and deeper into his life, they become more and more in peril. And this is a fantastic movie, and it came out in 2018. But the whole time you're watching it, you're like, this was absolutely made in the 80s. Like, it was so nostalgic 80s horror. It was perfect. Slasher. obviously 1984 when a lot of serial killer stuff was going on. This is a fantastic film. I think I saw it on Shudder actually. I think that was one of the only places I could find it.
I think I caught it on Xbox Live.
Yeah, maybe.
On the
it was an
Microsoft
accidental find. My fiance actually pointed it out. She's like, "What's Summer of '84?" And she's into like those nostalgic, crime movies. And so we just watched it. The end of it, we were both like, "Holy shit, that was a great movie." It involved kids, and then there's this whole thing at the end that still makes me uncomfortable to think about. Like, holy shit. And then once you're done it, you're like, okay, well, what the fuck? You're at the end. Everybody, the cops are everywhere. You're like, okay, but then but then what? And then the ending happens, and you're like, oh my god, they all fucking died.
Well, not all of them, but I did that threat at the end.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. So.
When the door thing creaks open, and I was like, "Oh shit! Oh fuck!"
Oh, I tell you, man, it was when he saw the pictures on the wall.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Oh fuck!"
Oh, wait a second.
But I fucking love this movie because I'm also a huge fan of Stranger Things, and Stranger Things is definitely it's like if Steven Spielberg and Stephen King just had an unholy baby of 80s awesomeness. And when I picked up Summer of '84, I was like, oh, this could be kind of interesting as another kind of 80s style. But I was shocked by how well it was done, especially for such an underrated or I would say an undermarketed film, and it played so well. The director and the directors and the writer had a solid grasp of the 80s. Obviously, they were familiar with it. They knew what they were talking about. But everything from the wardrobe to the slang to the music to even the architectural design, finding a neighborhood that gives that 80s vibe, and then as far as the architecture goes, and then of course ensuring that your color schemes and your everything is corrected to give that appeal. The movie was such a take back to my days growing when I grew up in Southern California, and riding bikes with my friends around the neighborhood, and they the kind of close knit mentality that some of these small town these little areas have. I had friends on the cul-de-sac that we saw each other every single day. We walked to school, and you had that kind of circle of friends, and I loved that. The notion is not only a throwback to some of my favorite 80s films, like The Goonies and Stand By Me, just the notion of kids coming together and being able and accomplishing great things, but every single thing about it was just an absolute nostalgia fest. And I'm a big fan of the 80s. I grew up in the 80s. The film just blew me away, and not to mention the storyline itself. The cop, the cop and the serial killer, just fucking wild.
Yeah, this is definitely film
is
it's fantastic. I didn't get a chance to watch it until we were just talking about it. So I had a friend of mine get a copy of it. And I mean, the thing is, it's solid, and it just reminded me of the fact that it's like kids aren't like this today. When you talk about, I remember growing up, and you had your friends. You had your friends that would come they would ride bikes, come knock on your door, and you'd go out and you'd go out and hang out and play and do all this other kind of stuff. And it was just a throwback to a different world. And I like how he just wasn't 80s art direction. It's easy to do 80s art direction. Oh, what clothes did they wear? What furniture? So throw up some 80s posters.
I mean, there was a 78 Camaro in the movie, so there was that.
But the thing is the overall feel of it. And I think we're actually coming into a real 80s inspired era in film, because we talk about Summer of '84, Stranger Things, you go to the TV show like The Goldbergs, where you have people our age that are reminiscing about the 80s. Just like when you look at 90s films, there are a lot of things that reminisce on the 70s, like Dazed and Confused, and that 70s a TV show.
Yeah.
I
really like that it wasn't that we're getting into a kind of an I would say a trend. It's not a caricature of the 80s, but an actual depiction of what it was like in the 80s.
Very much.
of both culturally, societally, how the family unit was in the 80s. And I like that it's like a window into the past instead of, the caricature of what you remember, where it's kind of like, it's ramped up for that nostalgia feeling. But I liked seeing it was like, yeah, it was like that. Wild in the memories that it brings back. And I absolutely adored the work that went into this. Took it not just a superbly acted and directed and shot film, a classic a classic murder mystery with some real horror elements in there, and this is some real over the top surprises, some shit that you would not expect happening, but very gritty, very realistic. Really captured the 80s, because it wasn't like 70s grindhouse. This was like a classic 80s film, and it felt like you were watching a movie. Aside from how clean it was, it really felt like this was a movie that was shot in the 80s. It was brilliant. The aesthetic was intense.
It was, because it comes across as a film that I would have watched growing up.
Yes.
Because you talk about, and this was huge with the 80s, when you talk about like the kids coming together, you didn't mention things like the Goonies, where you don't really see a lot of that today, where you have a group of kids and they're faithful to each other, they band together, and then something like strange out of nowhere happens, and these kids have to go on their own and work through it and solve this. And even that theme alone is a huge 80s concept. You just don't see that today. Yeah. We really don't. And so we have the art direction, we have the feel of it, and it's because it's easy to take 80s and just dress it up. But the time period that it takes place is essential to these characters. And that's what I talk about with any kind of films, any kind of filmmakers out there that want to do a story that takes place, a period piece, some story takes place in the past. Don't just have it in the past as it's kind of cool. Oh, this film takes place in the 70s. That's, just because I like 70s. But actually have the characters defined by the time period that they live in. And this is a movie that's a great example of how this story would not work today. It would not work in the 30s. It is something that it took place in the 80s, and it's essential of the fact that it took place in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's true. And they did such a good job on this going back to the 80s, and we've seen, I think Trick or Treat was supposed to be based in the 80s as well, right?
You're talking about the anthology one that...
Yeah.
I think that was present day.
Was it?
Yeah.
We had a lot of stuff in the 80s, though. I feel like, for whatever reason, I felt like that one was like when I was reading Throwback, I was thinking of that.
Well, it was the thing that stuck out to me is that typically movies that were shot in the 80s, they had especially kid-centric ones, that there was more of many of them were very, very upbeat, and they were very uptoned films, and the kids usually come out on top, and everything is fantastic. I love this one because the things that plague our children today those things did not just suddenly exist in the 2000s and the 2010s. They didn't just crop up all of a sudden. They've always been there. People, the kidnappings and serial murders, shit like this. These things did exist. It's just that without the advent of the internet, without the advent of mass media, people were not as aware. So people, oftentimes people will talk about, we could go out and play till the streetlights came on and everything was great. Nothing bad ever happened. No, they never knew about the bad things that were happening.
It was happening. We just weren't hearing about it.
People they just weren't hearing about it. Only the people that were around that time, I would say in the neighborhood, you heard about it there. But there is no internet, there is no email. These things don't exist, and so there's no cell phones. So at this point, there's no mass way to communicate other than through the news. And if the local news didn't reach you about something, you didn't know about it. And I like the depiction of the 80s and how these things did occur, but it's not like you could just, make a YouTube video about your experience, put out on the internet for everybody to suddenly, know about, or create a Wikipedia page or something of that nature. These things didn't exist. And so the inclusiveness of the neighborhood dynamic And I think the internet has kind of, taken that away, where neighborhoods don't have to come together like they did, in the 70s and the 80s, because they can always go online, and the community has expanded. But how often these days do you really know your neighbors? Do you get to know them? Do you have like block parties and stuff like that where or new neighbors come in and everybody welcomes them and and cooks them food and brings it over? We just don't do it anymore. Just the advent of technology and the advent of advanced communication. And I like the depiction in this film that the terrible things did occur. We just didn't know about them. So it felt very much like a window into something very real to me. And that's why I loved about this movie.
And the thing is you're right about it, because when you look at media was so selective back then. So obviously with the news is going to only going to highlight the biggest story for the ratings. So you're right. There's a lot of stuff that you didn't hear about. There are serial killers. We can name a bunch of serial killers that were going on in the 70s and 80s, but you just didn't know. And it was commonplace to go and knock on your neighbor's door. I knew the neighbor. I grew up on the same street my entire life. All throughout from like 5 years old till like I was my early 20s. So I knew the neighbors. Well, one of my neighbors is still one of my best friends today. We knew each other. We would go ride bikes. We would go to the creek. We would do and we did all these things without a cell phone. You knock on the door. Yeah, we'd hop on a bike. So a couple of friends would go to the creek, and our parents just kind of had faith that we'd come back.
As long as you're, like my dad would yell out the door, Alex, and that's when I knew to go home. It was like,
yeah, as long as you just stay in earshot.
Yeah, that's the deal. You see,
there's
with the media, the advent of media and having that information at your fingertips. There was something that I learned out of a Stephen King book I just read. His new book, it's called "If It Bleeds," and so like there's the whole "If it bleeds, it reads," and so that's what you'd hear in the news. But like when you've only got news that goes to like, okay, your local newspapers, you're not going to be talking about so-and-so in Pennsylvania that went missing. You would never know about that. So you never worry about it. And then you just get so comfortable with everything in your life that when something does, more people are, they had nothing else to do rather than watch, like you said, welcome the new neighbors in, watch the neighbors, get to know everybody. But like I couldn't possibly get to know all the neighbors on my street. There's so many people crammed into these little places now. It's terrifying with kids.
And what's interesting is the fact that we have so much at our fingertips, yet we feel less of a need to communicate with people. Because, we knew our neighbors growing up. We did. We knew, you either knew them directly or you knew a neighbor that knew them. Everybody on the street. And now, you don't really talk to neighbors anymore. It's harder to meet people. It's harder in terms of like with friends and stuff like that. Like I think one of the biggest realizations is there a point to high school reunions anymore? Because anybody you're curious about high school, you just look them up. That's it. There's no point. And it worked.
Like whatever. Yeah, I know what they do. I know where they work. I know how long they've been there. Like
yeah.
What do I need?
Versus back then, someone went off to college and they were gone. And then your 10 reunion happens. You probably haven't seen most of those people or know anything about them when you see them again.
It was really what the sense of trust that you had back in those days. Like you trusted your neighbors. You all lived together. You kind of share the same street, to the point of almost cliquishness, where you had to trust your neighbors. They are the individuals who will call the cops if they see something strange going on or somebody lurking around your property. They're the ones that will call the fire department. They're the ones who will come over and check if they haven't seen you come out to get your mail in a day or two. They're the ones that used to hold your mail for you. They'd come over to your house, they'd get your mail, they'd collect it for you while you were out of town. Keep an eye on the house for you from the outside. And it was because of that lack of kind of national knowledge that these relationships were able to be created. But now we have mass media coverage and we know every bad thing that's going on all around us at all times. And you suddenly realize that the bad stuff is literally right out there, right outside your door. So you don't know if you can trust your neighbors. You don't know how much responsibility you could give them out of your own life, where you could hand the responsibility to somebody else. And so we just don't get to know people anymore. And I love that in Summer of '84 that it showed it implicitly that trust that existed between neighbors as part of the neighborhood, especially if one of those neighbors is a cop.
Right.
And the kind of mentality around police officers at the time. It was a brilliant depiction, and something, it's kind of neat to kind of see, for me to kind of reminisce about what that was like, how things used to be and how things are now, 30 years later. It's just absolutely wild. That's why I love this it's one of my favorite throwback horror films.
Yeah.
What would your second favorite horror film be?
So it's something, it captures a time period, and they did a phenomenal job doing that. And I can't wait to see what other stuff that they come out with.
I'd like to see a lot of this. I'd like to see a lot more throwback stuff. If they can nail the 80s, as well as they did in this movie, this far ahead of that, I'd love to see stuff that goes back. And coming up, we had to push Halloween back, but that's going to be kind of a throwback in a multiple different kinds of ways. Question I'd like to ask the audience, though: what's your favorite throwback horror? This by far is absolutely one of my hands down favorite movies, and the whole 80s aspect that we talked about really brought this super nostalgic feel, but also it's very authentic. So I think this is probably one of my favorites. I want to know from the audience, though. Let us know. weekendhorror@gmail.com. JL, why don't you bring it home with, I think, probably one of the most recognized movies from the 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah, one that I saw early on. I was 5 when I saw this movie, but released August 12th, 1983. The Stephen King adaptation. God, we love our Stephen King adaptations here. We're looking back at Cujo.
Definitely.
So, directed by Louis Teague, screenplay by Don Carlos Dunaway and Barbara Turner, based on Cujo by Stephen King, and starring Scream Queen Dee Wallace, Daniel Hugh Kelly, Danny Pintaro, a very young Danny Pintaro, Ed Lauter, and Christopher Stone. What to say about Cujo? In a nutshell, for those not familiar with the film or the book that it is based on, the story centers around a mother and her son who currently going through family turmoil. The father's out of town dealing with business crap. Family's kind of falling apart. And in the midst of all this drama that's currently going on with the family, the mother takes her car, her failing Ford Pinto, out to this local mechanic who kind of lives out there in the rural country during one of the hottest summers that the characters live in Maine. One of the hottest summers they've ever seen. Drives the car out there to get it fixed, where the car then breaks down, and then mother and son quickly realize that they are trapped in their car by the rabid 200-pound Saint Bernard Cujo, who will not let them escape. And as the hours turn into days, and there's no water and no food, and the temperature in the car, because they have to keep the windows up lest the dog get in, things start getting really, really insane. I loved this film not only for its brilliant depiction of Cujo, of the animal work that was done in this, but also its simplicity. We have, these are not two-dimensional characters. These are deep characters, but we don't need to lose too much in exposition. We see what's happening. This was a hallmark I love of the 80s, of 80s filmmaking, where you could get rich characters, rich dynamics, and really, really strong narratives, and you could do it minimally. You didn't need hours of exposition in order to affect something or make something happen. The quality of the cast, the quality of the work done behind this was amazing. And that's why Cujo is up there with like Christine and Carrie in just the level of faith in the source material and the professional quality that was brought to bringing the story to life. One of the best Stephen King adaptations, probably top 10 Stephen King adaptations. I love this movie. And what went into making the dog is so awesome because, working with animals is difficult. They say, Eugene, who was it who said, the two things you never do: you never work with animals, you never work with children. So, but creating Cujo obviously makes sure the animal does not, because you're depicting an animal gone insane from rabies, and it's a 200-pound Saint Bernard, which is a massively huge animal and can be quite dangerous. So, trying to make the dog into what it was just from what you see in the movie, was wild. It was fucking intense.
Yeah, a lot. So a lot actually went into it, because you have to be careful in terms of like a dog. There are plenty of dog attacks, and the dog is breaking glass and jumping through windows. And there's a
oh shit that final scene when he comes, man, that gets me every time.
The surprise jump in the window. Yeah. And so a lot of the stuff is real dangerous, and obviously they had the dog's safety in mind in it. So it took a lot of work to put that together. So they ended up, first of all, they have to use multiple dogs, because sometimes a dog doesn't feel like acting or has trouble with doing something. So they end up using 4 Saint Bernards. A couple of reports said they've used up to 9 Saint Bernards, but at least 4. They used a couple of mechanical dogs, and they actually used a black Labrador Great Dane mix in a Saint Bernard costume. And the put a Saint Bernard costume on him, and then finally, for some of like the real intense stuff with like breaking the glass on the car and like biting the door handle, they actually had it was stunt supervisor Gary Morgan, or stuntman Gary Morgan, in a dog costume.
And that is wild, because you really can't, because I mean, I never would have guessed that. I did, until I started reading up on the film, kind of like the making of it. I would have never guessed there was a guy in a suit at any one of those junctures.
And see, that tells you right there the power of editing. Like I sat there to watch it, and if you look for it real close, you can see a couple moments. But just as a casual viewing, the editing is so good in the film, it's hard to depict which one they're actually using.
There were specific scenes, and I know some of these would have gotten Alex. Like the scene when the dog actually gets in the car, and she tries to get out. She doesn't manage to get the door closed fast enough, and the dog actually gets into the car and is on this. She's late. She's pinned down on the seats, and this 200-pound animal is on top of her, snapping like a motherfucker. And it was just like, I can't even imagine the intensity of that, of trying to be in that scene, because obviously, from a filmmaker's standpoint, the dog is not crazy. But creating that, and it looked so fucking real. It blows my mind that at some points that was a mechanical dog, or wasn't even a Saint Bernard to begin with, or something of that nature. But yes, the editing's absolutely superb, because watching this the first time, there's not a moment there you don't believe that dog is there doing that.
And this is a great trick. When you have something like this, use different angles, use different multiple techniques. I know when they're talking with Christopher Nolan in Inception, and people asked how he did stuff, he would use 5 different techniques for like one scene when Joseph Gordon-Levitt is floating through the hallway. So just when your eyes like, oh, he's on the wire, the very next shot, he does something that a wire can't do. So you're like, okay, well, that can't be a wire, because then it's a mold or something. And what this movie does is it flips back and forth so quick. You can't do if you did just one scene, all mechanical dog, we'll eventually go, oh, that's a mechanical dog. That's a real dog. That's a guy in a dog costume. But being able to switch back and forth with the editing, you can never tell. So you automatically assume it's just a real dog the entire time.
They did so good.
It
was great.
We're all dog lovers here, right?
Yeah.
I'm okay with dogs.
Get the fuck out of
here. They all right. It really gets me, because even in watching this movie, there's still some scenes that make me tear up. And it's weird to say about a movie like Cujo, but there are some moments where it makes me tear up, because the dog is a dog. The dog has rabies, and the dog is sick. the dog doesn't understand what's happening to it. We do as people, but the dog doesn't. And watching this lovable, just baby of a Saint Bernard, just this goofy dog, descend into this level of madness, and it's not the dog's fault. And it kills me every time I watch it as you slowly see Cujo begin to fall apart. It's
hard because, like you talk about the Saint Bernard, animal phobias are like the most common specific phobia, with like 36% of it being like dogs or cats, being afraid of dogs or cats. And I actually recently ran into a person, it was a child, who was absolutely cinephobic, to the point where it was like, this child saw my dog, which I get it, because my dog is 120 pounds. When he stands on his back legs, he's 6 foot tall easily. And so he's a large dog, but he's the most gentle dog in the world. And so it's like, to see somebody afraid, is so afraid just because it's that species. And then you look at this Saint Bernard, like, I get how that could be terrifying. It's a 200-pound plus dog. That would be absolutely... My dog could knock my ass over. I'm 6'3", 200
when Cujo
pounds.
was up on the when he's up on the car, like on his he's up on his hind legs, he's got it, and he's it's not like he's fully splayed out. He's up on the car and he's having to look down in the window and everything.
Yeah.
He was like, that dog is fucking enormous. That is a vehicle he's at, and he's making the vehicle look small.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dog, like I said, my dog is 120 pounds and it's like 6 feet tall. So I can't imagine like seeing, like, my dog, he'll run up and he'll jump on me, he'll knock my ass over. I'm tall, I'm 6'3", and I've got some weight on me, 230 pounds, and this dog could knock my ass over just by playing around. Now, like, think about a dog having like a disease that makes him go crazy and like being aggressive. I could not imagine. I would not be able to get away from my dog if he went nuts. And he's a Great Pyrenees, so he's not like big and fat. He's like real thin. I mean, I could mess around and play with him now, but if he really got into it, he could tear my ass apart.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was in the military, I got a chance to put on the red suit with the K9 unit.
Oh, yeah.
And so they put the giant red coat on, and the guy doing the instruction was like, okay, I want you to run. So I'm like I'm running, and I'm about like 50 yards away. And he's like, no, keep running. It's about the length of a football field. I'm probably about anywhere from 80 to 100 yards. And he's like, I'm releasing the dog. And I shit you not, it took the dog probably 2 seconds to get me. Like, it was like, I'm like 100 yards away, release, and all of a sudden he jumped up, grabbed the sleeve, and pulled me to the ground. It was that quick. Like, that's the power that a dog has.
Now they use was that a Belgian that they were using?
It was a German Shepherd. Yeah.
German Shepherd? See, I've got 2 German Shepherds myself. And Jingles is the big one. Shotzi's a little bit smaller, but Jingles is the big one, and he's an absolute baby. He's just like, he's a mama's boy. Just a goofy dog, cries all the time. But I saw my dog, and Jingles, I've never seen him be like super, like, crazy active or do anything. He's always just being kind of lazy. But one time, I saw Jingles take off running once. He was down the street, he'd gotten outside, and he was playing around, he thought it was a game. And Angela called him back to the house. And I saw my dog, I'd never seen this before, take off like a bat out of hell. And I had no idea that my dog was that fast.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. Once you see the power and the speed, that just kind of erupt that fast. And he was gone. Like, he left me in the dust. Just, it was like, son of a bitch. And I've never seen him run like that again, because he prefers, like, lay down, lays around, kind of pad about, I'm just a lazy German Shepherd. But when he needs to be, he can get up and go.
You can fucking go.
And when I can understand why people would be afraid, because when you see stuff like that, and you see, you live in proximity to the dog, and you see what the dog can really do, I can understand why that can make some people nervous. Cynophobia, no laughing matter. There are people out there that are phobic of dogs, but God, I love him. I love him to death.
So this was my thing. I was okay with dogs for a long period of time. I'm still okay with dogs. I don't hate dogs or anything like that. But I worked for FedEx for a year, and I delivered out in the country where people had like legit guard dogs. Like, I would pull up in a truck, and people would be like, "Don't get out of your truck because they will attack you." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll hand the package through the window." And one time I wasn't in a FedEx truck. I was in one of those like Penske trucks where you can't get into like the driver area. So I went in the back, and so it was like at night. It was already dark outside, and it was like a little road, middle of nowhere, and I knew this house had 2 really aggressive dogs. And so what I ended up doing was I was like, okay, well, before I even pull up this house, I'm going to hop in the back, grab the package, and then put it in the cab. So when I drive up, I can just like toss it out the cab. I went in the back, and I went back to go and grab their package. And all of a sudden I heard wrestling, and it was like leaves or something like that. And I started hearing footsteps. And I realized this dog was stalking me. Not just bark, bark, bark to like scare people. No, this dog comes out of the bushes growling.
Fuck that.
Holy shit.
It's reminiscent. There's that one particular scene that happened in Cujo. It was when the kid... the kid who's a part of the family that owns Cujo. The kid is out there in the morning fog, and he's calling for Cujo to come in. And Cujo's been sick for a while now, and he's already starting to deteriorate. And so he's calling for Cujo, and the sound is kind of like warped by all the fog around him. And on occasion you hear a barking, that's somewhere out there in the mist. And the kid's like, one was like, he's like, Cujo, where are you, Cujo? It's like, and then he's backing up, and then all of a sudden you hear that growl, and the dog was already behind him.
Yeah.
And you could tell, and obviously, that he's foaming at the mouth. He's very, very sick, but he's not so far gone that he flips out, and he kind of like backs off a little bit, and then just kind of trudges off into the mist and disappears. And it was stuff like that where that scene always gets me, because how quickly how much better they are at the hunt, at the stalking, at finding things than we are. And I love this movie. I both love and it breaks my heart several times, but I really, really adore this movie.
It has some touching moments. It has the fact that you see Dee Williams put on a fantastic performance.
Oh, she was incredible.
In what the lengths that she has to go to protect her son.
Yeah, and the kid starts spazzing out, having dehydration seizures in the car, and she's got to get him to water. So it's so wild. The intensity in those scenes in such a small space was so brilliantly done. And of course, the final showdown with Cujo, because eventually at one point, fuck it, she's got to take care of this dog so she can save her son's life. And just that final showdown with Cujo, when she manages to get her hands on the baseball bat and they're squaring off. Oh, it's just a level of intensity. I loved it. Loved every. If it comes on, I'll watch it. But that's a question for the audience. I'm really, really curious. What is your favorite horror dog? Because there are several out there. Many, many depictions. Another favorite of mine is Max from Man's Best Friend. I dug that storyline, and I dug the concept of, the dog is kind of the villain of the piece, but the dog is really blameless because it's what we do to the dog, or the lack of what we do to the dog. Obviously, if Cujo had had his rabies shots,
he wouldn't have gotten rabies shots.
Yes, so that's the kind of the big thing. But dogs in horror is both something I love and something that just it kills me to watch, because it's going to end badly. But what is your favorite horror dog? I want to know what the audience thinks. Do they have one that comes to mind? One that really kind of haunts them? Because I find these movies also to be a little on the haunting side, because they hit you right in the feels. Definitely let us know in the comments, or hit us up at weekinhorror@gmail.com.
All right, well, that concludes our episode. thank you so much for listening. We could not do this without you. And so we are extremely grateful that you are taking time out of your day to listen to us just chat about some of your favorite horror movies. And so, as always, if you need more information, you'd like to learn a little bit more, visit our website at weekendhorror.net, where you can get more information about us and some giveaways and stuff like that we're having, because we are coming up on our 1 year mark. So we have some giveaways. Make sure you keep in mind the date, September 23rd. That's going to be our live stream where we will have trivia, giveaways, and all sorts of kind of stuff. And then you can always email us at weekendhorror@gmail.com for comments, concerns, feedback. Let us know what you think, because we're kind of lonely. Go ahead, hit us up. Why not? And
please talk.
Yeah,
to me.
just all by myself. But and if you like what you hear, please visit our Patreon, patreon.com/weekendhorror. We have several amounts that you can donate, $1, $3, and I believe a $5 mark, and that'll give you early access to our bloodbaths and our After Dark. Our bloodbaths is where we use our horror expertise, and we'll actually battle 2 horror villains to the death to see who will come out on top. And then you also get early access to our After Dark, where we have our monthly guests, and we sit there and we just chat for a while. We chat about the state of the way horror in films and stuff that they have coming up. So it's just a little bit of an extra chat, an extra way to learn about our special guest. And then you can also go to our Facebook page and our Twitter, both /Weekend Horror, where you get our daily splatters, a little bit of horror knowledge every single day. And then also check out our YouTube channel /Weekend Horror, where you can go and check out our podcast, and we have some other stuff that we'll post there. And then also we'll have some Teespring merch. That's right. Merchandise.
We have merchandise.
Yeah! We have t-shirts, we have mugs, and they're going to be cool, they're going to be stylish. I'm going to be supporting them, so...
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, they're there.
You're not supposed to tell them that. But anyways, so check it.
Our moms think they're
Yes.
cool.
Hey, that's all that matters, man.
So definitely check out our merch. We'll have a link on our webpage, and then Teespring. That's going to be sponsoring everything. So definitely check out all that. And I'm Eugene.
I'm Alex.
I'm JL.
And we'll see you next week. And as always, stay scared.